Hey everyone, happy Monday. It is Linda Ljucovic. I'm working from home today, so hopefully this lighting's okay. Holistic Nutritionist at Balance Point Health Center, and this is my second talk. Hopefully some of you were able to tune into the first one, which was all about the keto diet, and I'd be interested to see if any of you tried it or what your opinions are on that. But today I thought we would talk about the calcium conundrum because it is a real issue for a lot of people out there. If you haven't already heard, there is quite a high rate of osteoporosis in North America, especially if you compare it to other areas in the world. China, for example, has much lower rates of osteoporosis. So why is this happening? So if you're like me, you want to know, right? I'm 50 now, and so you really start to think about these things a little bit more seriously than you have, in your younger years. Right, there was a stat that I was just reading about the other day that said that fractures over 50 are actually more common than heart disease and cancer. And it's causing a real strain on our healthcare system. And so this is definitely a topic that really warrants some attention. So why is it so hard to have strong bones when we've got calcium everywhere, right? If you pick up a product like orange juice, everything says calcium fortified, right? Almond milk, right? For example, if you're going dairy-free, has 30%, if you take a look at the label, of your recommended calcium amount. So what is going wrong? Like, how is it so hard to get enough calcium in your body? Well, it's not that simple. So I'm going to take what might not be a super simple topic and try to simplify it a little bit. So I'm not going to get super sciencey, but I'm going to try to put it in a way that you understand what is happening in our world with our bones and calcium. So what I'm going to do is I thought I would share it in a way that you could relate. So I did a Google search and I found the 5 easiest way to increase your calcium intake for strong bones. And so that's kind of the mainstream advice that you're going to see out there in the market. And I'm going to tell you why everyone's so confused. So the first, and then I'm going to talk about each of those 5 things and maybe what's going wrong. And then I'm going to finish it up talking about what can you do about that to make sure that you're getting enough calcium. Okay, but the key is, and what you're going to learn by the end of this is maybe calcium's not the problem after all. All right, so the first one is get your greens. Greens are not really the first thing we think about when we think about getting calcium, right? Would you agree? It's normally, oh, I need to make sure I eat enough milk or get enough cheese in my diet to get that calcium. But believe it or not, greens can be a really great way to get your calcium. Greens like collards and kale and the dark green leafies are fantastic. First, I should back up and say how much calcium we need. How about we start there? So depending on the phase of life you're in, there's different needs, but on average, adults need about 1,000 milligrams a day. Okay, so if you think about it, 1 glass of milk can be about 300 milligrams. So if you're eating dairy, you can see that it might be, realistic to be able to get that amount of dairy in your diet. Now, when you hit menopause, you need 1,200, so you do need more calcium. When you're pregnant, you need more calcium, and when you're growing and young, you need more calcium. So keep those phases in mind as well. So get your greens. So collards have 360 milligrams of calcium, but here's the interesting thing. It's more easily absorbed by the body than through a dairy product, through milk. It's 50% absorbable, where dairy is 32% absorbable. So that's something to consider. You might be better off having a cup of collard greens versus a glass of milk. And we're going to get more into that later, okay, in terms of what's going on. But that first recommendation is get more greens every day. The second one is to eat canned fish like salmon or sardines. So I still remember my mom always used to say, you got to crush up those bones in the can of salmon. I used to think it was so disgusting as a kid, right? Like, ew, I'm eating bones. But there's a lot of health behind that. So eating the salmon bones can really be great for your bones. So really high in calcium. So that's another great way to get calcium in your diet. Number 3 was eating dairy. Okay. So what if you're not eating dairy though? So if you're not eating dairy, then it would be, adding some more alternatives into your diet intentionally. The fourth recommendation was to focus on fortified foods. So you'll see lots of cereal boxes and orange juice and dairy and cheese and you name it. Everything is fortified with calcium, you guys. If you really start paying attention, and you will now after this talk, you're going to notice that everything says, it's health washing again, everything's fortified with calcium. So what is going on? How could we not be getting enough calcium? The 5 recommendation I found, kind of the mainstream recommendation, was to take supplements. Okay, that's fair. So those are decent recommendations, but let's be super analytical and critical of these, right? Okay, because I'm a holistic nutritionist, and so we look at a lot more than diet. I'm sure you've heard Bonnie explain this, but we look at everything. We look at lifestyle, we look at what's happening with our farming, we look at our world, we look at our stress, we look at everything to really figure out what's going on with your nutrition status. So let's take a look at what's up with this. So why are 1 in 3 women developing osteoporosis and 1 in 5 men? That's a lot of people. Let's dig in. So first recommendation, get your greens. How many of you think you get lots of greens every day, right? Probably not. So this recommendation, although it seems really great and practical, it's not for most people. People are on the run. And if you're not intentionally trying to add the right types of greens into your diet, you're probably not getting enough greens or calcium from your greens as you might think. All right. So that's a great recommendation, but we need to kind of look at that more deeply. So it is really important to be intentional with the types of greens you're getting. Number 2, the seafood recommendation. And so although that's a great recommendation, most people are just not getting fish every day in their diet. And if I think back to the last time I had canned salmon, it was a week ago, and I'm a nutritionist, and I do try to avoid canned foods as often as I can, but sometimes it's fine. But you don't really get that every day. So maybe you're not getting enough calcium there. Number 3, dairy. So I think this is the one where most people focus. So if you are eating dairy and cheese, you guys are probably fine, but I'm going to talk about what you have to worry about in a second. If you are not eating dairy and cheese, like for whatever reason, maybe you know they're inflammatory, or you're sensitive to them, or lactose intolerance, or whatever your issue might be, there are a lot of people choosing to avoid dairy these days. And so it can take a little bit more intentional work to get the dairy that you need, or the calcium that you need out of non-dairy products. And the reason for that is that not everyone drinks the non-dairy products the way they drink dairy. So for example, like, would you have a glass of almond milk in your day, or a couple of them? I don't know, maybe you do, but maybe you don't. So it's one of those things you really want to think about. You want to think about, are you intentionally making sure that you get enough of the non-dairy products in your diet every day? And are you reading the labels, right, to make sure that you're getting, the amounts that are in each of those products? Because some alternatives have higher amounts of calcium than others, right? Because if you're not, like for me, for a period of time when I was avoiding dairy, what I would often do is I would just splash. Like I would splash almond milk in this, in my oatmeal. I would splash it in my smoothies. I would splash it in this, splash it in that. I definitely was not getting a cup a day until I really started to look at it and be intentional about it. Okay, so that could be an issue there. Now, the bigger issue, which I'm going to talk about in the next point, is the fact that it's processed. Okay, and I know Bonnie has mentioned this in some of her videos, and so you already kind of know the issue with processed foods, but I'll go into it a little briefly here as well as we start to talk about fortified foods. So yes, there are a lot of fortified foods out there. So what is wrong with this? Well, it's all about that processing. So when a food is processed, what that really means is that they're stripping something out of it. Okay, it's not a whole food. And the body doesn't recognize something that's not a whole food. And what it tries to do, let's say this is your whole food, and through processing, we've taken out a couple of minerals, okay? Or we've messed up the proportions of them. And let's say we're like, okay, well, let's add some more calcium back in. But we're not adding these 2 missing things back in. We're adding more calcium, okay? So what your body does is it steals those missing pieces from your tissues, your blood, your bones, your body, to be able to absorb that food. Okay, so what you could be doing unknowingly is pulling calcium from your bones to be able to digest that processed food. Does that make sense? So there's another piece to this. So when a processed food is being consumed, it can also create an acidic body. And so some of you may have, stumbled across this in your research around health, but what we want is we want an alkaline body. And there are certain foods like pop and alcohol and coffee and, too many processed foods that can create an acidic body. When the body is acidic, it messes with your minerals, like your calcium, right? You require more buffering of calcium to be able to balance that acidity. Think of wine and cheese, right? There's a reason that we recommend that you have cheese with wine, because wine is pretty acidic, and it's actually a good thing to have cheese with your wine because it balances out the acidity levels, all right? So for a period of time, I had cut out all dairy, and I was still drinking wine, and I could feel the acidity. Like I always felt like, oh, I need something to absorb that wine. And that was my body's intelligence saying that something is out of balance here. You need to get more minerals in your body. So I'm not saying you can't have those foods, because we all love a glass of wine now and again, and we love our coffee, but you just have to be a little bit more intentional with creating that balance. So perhaps you need a little bit more calcium if you are eating those acidifying foods, okay? And here's another thing. Magnesium is really important in this calcium balance. So just for the sake of explaining this, you need the right ratio to get calcium in your bones. So I'm just going to talk about magnesium and calcium right now. But just as an example, you need roughly 2 calcium to 1 magnesium to get those 2 calciums into your bones. Now, what happens is normally we are getting, if we're eating the standard American diet, we're normally getting 20 calciums to 1 magnesium. Okay, so we've got way too much calcium compared to the magnesium that we're taking in. So what happens to that excess calcium? So if we're getting that 20 calcium to 1 magnesium, we're only pulling in 2 of those calciums into the bones. What's happening with the 18 calciums? Just to make it easy. They're going somewhere, right? And are they excreted that easily from the body? No, they're not. So what happens is they either go throughout the body and they deposit places, or they go through the kidneys and they can create kidney stones. Okay, so if you've ever had kidney stones or known someone to have kidney stones, those are not fun. And it can be an issue with that calcium piece. So it puts a lot of strain on the kidney. And the kidneys also have a role, and the role is vitamin D. And enter our third mineral that's important in this whole interplay of vitamins and minerals. Vitamin D is really important as well for calcium absorption. And most of us are not getting vitamin D. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but in the research, in terms of osteoporosis rates, those closest to the equator had lower rates of osteoporosis compared to those who live in the northern countries or away from that light, that sunshine, that level of sunshine. So we really may need to be intentional with getting our vitamin D. And so let's talk about that, the supplement piece. So that was the 5 recommendation, is getting supplements. So supplements are great when they're a good, high quality supplement. One of my favorites is for vitamin D is Physica Energetics. We sell this at our office, Balance Point. We're in Oakville, just in case you haven't heard of us, but it also contains vitamin D3. So I think Bonnie recommended or talked about this in one of her videos, but a lot of the vitamin D that's in milk and some of the products that will be fortified, they put vitamin D2, not vitamin D3. So you're not actually getting the right type of vitamin D. And so you need that D3 to get it into your bones, as well as that magnesium. Okay, so this contains vitamin D3 as well as vitamin K, which is also important for the absorption. So we need to be supplementing with vitamin D. And this is not just for winter, you guys. This is all year long if you are working inside, because many of us work inside all summer, but we're not getting outside. So we're not getting that no sunscreen time where our skin is exposed to the sunshine. So that's one other thing that you really want to be intentional with, is getting sunshine without your sunscreen on for at least half an hour a day. And take your vitamin D. Okay, so make sure you're taking your vitamin D. You can work with your naturopath or your nutritionist. We're happy to help you with that as well, if you're not certain how much vitamin D you need. But this is so important for prevention for a lot of different diseases in Canada that we have. So what can we do about all of this? So here are my recommendations to take away. So one thing that you might want to do is just write yourself a food diary for 3 days and then just do the math. If you need help doing the math to see whether or not you're getting enough calcium and magnesium and vitamin D, you can definitely reach out to me. I'm happy to help, or someone else at our clinic is happy to help with that. Our naturopaths love doing that as well. Next thing you might want to do is check your pH levels. You can actually buy pH strips online. Genuine Health has them as well. You can even get them at Fortino's. And you basically just pee on them and it shows you what your pH level is, so what the acidity of your body is. And you want to just get your body to an alkaline state. And then that way you know that your minerals are doing okay and you're probably supporting your bones by having an alkaline body. That's something you can do. And then just try something new. Just be more intentional with getting your calcium, your magnesium, and your vitamin D. So how do you, I just see a question over here. How do you recommend taking our magnesium? So yeah, that's the best way to always get your vitamins and minerals is through food. So I intentionally eat seeds every day. So I make smoothie bowls and I throw a handful of pumpkin seeds on there every day. So pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, excellent for magnesium. You can even grind up sesame seeds, which are super high in calcium and magnesium, and you can mix them with your flax, your ground flax. You can throw that, sprinkle it on salads, put it in soups, put it in your smoothie. It's a great way to up your minerals. Super, super healthy. If you are someone who eats dairy and a lot of fortified products, I would highly recommend that you take a magnesium supplement if you're not eating the seeds and if you're not open to doing that. You definitely take a look at supplements out there. Magnesium bisglycinate is fantastic, but it depends on you, depends on you. Everyone's so different, so it's really hard to give like a blanket recommendation. That's why it's always good to work with a healthcare provider, but you could take supplement form as well. So what else? So definitely take your vitamin D, you guys. If you are not on a vitamin D, and I'm not talking the hard packed pills, those are really hard to absorb. Get a liquid one that goes under your tongue. Genestra is also great. And start taking your vitamin D and get your kids on it. Try to intentionally build a greens into your diet every day. It is so healthy for so many other things, even outside of calcium. So get those greens every day. Handful in your smoothie, throw some kale in. Spinach isn't as good, but kale or collard greens, throw it in your soups, blend it into like a sauce, like a pasta sauce. There's so many really great ways to get some extra greens into your body, but just really be intentional with it. And just do a check, you guys. I think that's the most important thing, is just check in, be honest, map your food out, see how you're doing, ask for help if you need it, and take it seriously. Because honestly, it's not going to happen just naturally, just by like eating the way all the other North Americans eat, because proof has it that it's not working. So that's all I wanted to share. And I didn't mean to freak you out. There's lots you can do through diet and nutrition just to get those levels up and to be a little bit more balanced. If you have any questions, you guys, just make a comment under here and just tag my name, and I'll check in over the next few days and I'll get back to you with your answer. Thanks, guys, and have a great day. Enjoy the sunshine.